The United States is finally pulling its troops out of Eastern Europe. Europe now claims Trump is supposedly fulfilling part of an agreement with Putin this way. Romania reported that the Kremlin proposed dividing spheres of influence in Europe during initial United States negotiations to end the war in Ukraine. The United States has already started significantly reducing its military presence in Romania and also plans to cut its forces in Bulgaria, Slovakia, and Hungary. Interestingly, the United States Armed Forces Command stated that this is not a weakening of commitments to NATO or Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty. On the contrary, it is a positive sign of Europe's growing potential and responsibility. That's why the Americans can afford to leave. At the same time, NATO only stated that it maintains close contact with the United States government regarding the deployment of troops in European countries, after Washington informed its allies about plans to reduce the number of troops on the eastern flank of Europe. In fact, this means that the United States is withdrawing the troops from Europe that Joe Biden sent to the region at the beginning of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine in 2022. So what is happening and how much could this weaken Europe? I'm Alexei Peachy, let's discuss this together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like this episode, and be sure to leave your comment under this video, share your opinion. Also, subscribe to my Telegram channel Peachy News, the link is in the description of this video. There, we publish breaking news as it comes in. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so through donations, sponsorship, or a paid subscription. By using the links and details in the description of this video, it says there, support the Alexei Peachy channel. Use any format that works for you, I appreciate any support. The United States has started significantly reducing its military presence in Eastern Europe. About 800 American troops are being withdrawn from Romania, and there are also plans to reduce the contingent in Bulgaria, Slovakia, and Hungary. According to NATO military sources, on October 27, it was officially announced through NATO procedures that about 800 American troops would be withdrawn from Romania. This decision was made by the White House and it has already come into effect, although theoretically it can still be reconsidered by the United States Congress. But it is unlikely to do so. Currently, American units are stationed at 3 military bases in Romania, and it is still unknown at which base the reduction will take place. Sources note that this step is not allegedly related to political events in Eastern European countries, for example in Romania. This was allegedly related to the annulment of the presidential election results. But the rumors clearly aren't related to this. Overall, the decision to withdraw American troops concerns only 4 countries: Romania, Bulgaria, Slovakia, and Hungary. But it does not affect Poland or the Baltic states. At the same time, details regarding the timing, scale, and specific directions of the withdrawal are not being disclosed yet. As the Romanian Ministry of Defense noted, Bucharest was informed about the United States' decision to adjust its troop numbers in Europe. Here is a quote. The Romanian Ministry of National Defense was informed about the reduction of some American troops deployed on NATO's eastern flank as part of the process of reassessing the global posture of the United States Armed Forces. The ministry reported that among the brigade elements that will end their rotation in Europe, there are forces intended for Romania and stationed at an undisclosed airbase. Romania stated that there is nothing unexpected for them in this situation. They also noted that the change in the number of American troops is the result of new priorities set by the Donald Trump administration, which were announced back in February. Quote, "When making the decision, the fact that NATO has strengthened its presence and activities on the eastern flank was also taken into account, which allows the United States to adjust its military position in this region. The decision of the United States is to end the rotation in Europe of the brigade that had units in several NATO countries. At the same time, about 1,000 American servicemen will still remain deployed on the territory of Romania." Meanwhile, the representative of the Ministry of Defense, Palata Janusz Seimei, confirmed that Warsaw had not received any information from Washington that the American side was planning to reduce its contingent in Poland. He recalled that this issue was discussed in particular between the President of Poland, Karol Nawrocki, and the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and the latter promised not to reduce the number of United States troops in Poland. Well, it's worth recalling here that at the beginning of this year, United States President Donald Trump announced that he wanted to reduce the American military contingent in Europe by 20%. In the spring, it became known that Europeans were concerned that they would not be warned in advance and would find out from the media that thousands of American servicemen were being withdrawn from the contingent. But as we see, Trump is still warning. At the same time, the command of the United States Army in Europe and Africa confirmed plans to relocate part of the military contingent from Europe. They added that changing American military deployments won't impact Europe's security. Washington announced the relocation of the 2nd Combat Brigade of the 101st Airborne Division to a base in Kentucky. Quote, "This does not mean the withdrawal of American troops from Europe or a weakening of commitments to NATO and Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty. On the contrary, this is a positive sign of Europe's growing capability and responsibility." NATO, by the way, only made a vague statement that they maintain close contact with the United States government regarding the deployment of troops in European countries, after Washington told allies about plans to cut troop numbers on Europe's eastern flank. And now, the alliance representative also noted that changes in the number of American troops are not something exceptional. According to him, even after the announced reduction, the presence of United States forces in Europe remains greater than in previous years. NATO is basically saying there's no reason to panic. But the leadership in Romania doesn't completely agree with NATO. Well, not everyone in Romania agrees with this. Russia was pushing for the withdrawal of American troops from the countries on NATO's eastern flank. This is the statement made by the Romanian president's advisor on defense and national security, Cristian Diaconescu. Back in February of this year, he claimed that the Kremlin voiced the proposal to divide spheres of influence in Europe during the first round of United States negotiations on ending the war in Ukraine. And now I'll quote Diaconescu. "Russian expectations are connected to the idea that at some point the United States will convince its European partners in NATO to give up the alliance's security guarantees for countries that joined after 1997. Then these regions would become negotiation topics that we wouldn't join, like in Yalta, likely resulting in Russia's sphere of influence being recognized." This is not my interpretation, this is their statement. In addition, former commanders of the naval forces and Romanian intelligence officer Sandu. Valentin Mateo noted that Russia has long dreamed of removing the Americans from the European security architecture in order to gain control over the eastern part of the continent. Although Washington has so far answered no, the Kremlin continued to put pressure because this is Vladimir Putin's strategy. And now I will remind you that this spring the United States announced the relocation of its troops from the ESEO air base in Poland, through which 95% of Western weapons are sent to Ukraine. At the time, the move was explained as a necessity to optimize the presence and save American taxpayers tens of millions of dollars a year. Well, and a source from National Broadcasting Company News said that the United States is considering the possibility of withdrawing up to 10,000 soldiers from Eastern Europe. That's half of the contingent that Joe Biden's administration deployed in Poland and Romania in 2022 to deter Russia. So, as they say, draw your own conclusions, so I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's it for now. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.